Hello, welcome to those who are joining. Say hello in the chat. How's my audio video? We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Hello, Gita, Manal. Hello, Amaranta. All right, we'll give it another minute and then we'll get started. So friends, we found out today that the session, Wednesday night session, which has been taken over by monastics outside of the monastery for the last month, was open today. So we had to get in here. And I have been having the idea, this actually stems from Vesak. There is one of the lay supporters who lives near the monastery, named Elliot, and another person were talking about the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. I think Elliot had never read it. And we were going, and I said, I heard this, and I said, well, let's read it. And we were going to do it, you know, in the week since, but it just never worked out. So now is the time. I felt this is perfect timing. So we have tonight. And tomorrow, 8 a.m., I'll be back again for part 2. So Mahaparinibbana Sutta is very big, and I can be very talkative, but I think we can do it in 2 hours. We'll see. But we should be able to finish it in 2 hours, so long as I don't go on too many asides. Welcome, Karuna. So Mahaparinibbana Sutta is a very important sutta, very different sutta. I remember it struck me, and I read it in my early days of first learning suttas, maybe about 15 years ago. And what struck me about the sutta was that it was much more of a story, in the framework of a story, than all the other suttas. You know, as somebody who was an anthropology major and loved reading the stories of various cultures and things like that, this struck me much more as a kind of wonderful story of the time of the Buddha. And so it really connected with me. And I would also say that there were some things in here that the Buddha said that were kind of like the clincher for me in being a Buddhist. Like I was already there, but then I read the Buddha, the things that he said in the sutta, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is for me. Buddhism is for me, because the Buddha is just amazing, and how his wisdom and how he set things up. He set up precedents here in the sutta that are still followed to this day. Some of them are not followed, but some of them are followed, and so it's quite a wonderful, profound, amazing sutta. This is not a sutta if you want to learn about the deep meditative practices and stuff like that. This is not going to be one of those suttas. But not every sutta out of 5,000 pages is. There's a lot of ground that's covered. And so this sutta is also going to cover a lot of ground. And this sutta is one of those where a lot of context is needed to fully understand it. Like when I first read it, I had no context for a lot of the things in here, but it was still quite profound. So we'll be going through this, and I will try to be concise in my commentary because it is very big. And for those of you who want to follow along, I'm going to be reading off of Sutta Central, Bhante Sujato's translation. And let me see. And you can, okay, I put the link in the chat. And also we have a friend here, Amy, who's visiting the monastery. Who's going to be following along with the Bhikkhu Bodhi translation. And if we need various different translation or different to see what Bhikkhu Bodhi says about it, then we have this Amy here to help with that. All right. So let's get started. So the first thing is the title. Parinibbana. This is the word that we use for when a Buddha or an Arahant leaves their final body. The reason why we use this word as opposed to death is because in Buddhism, when we use the word death, this is interconnected with birth, right? This is samsaric journey that we're talking about. Birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. So there had to be a word for, well, they've left their final body. They've become fully extinguished. Parinibbana. That's what it means. And this is, Bhante Sujato has translated this as the Great Discourse on the Buddha's Extinguishment. Right? This is when an awakened being has left their final body, they become extinguished. So we'll get started. Thus, I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha on the Vulture's Peak Mountain. Oh, hello, Nattica. Hello, Wasabi. Let's see, did I miss? Hello, Barefoot Dan. Now at that time, King Ajatasattu of Magadha, son of the Princess Videha, wanted to invade the Vajis. So King Ajatasattu, and this deserves a little bit of background. So King Ajatasattu became king by killing his father, who was a great disciple of the Buddha, King Bimbisara. And he was also supposedly involved in a plot with Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, to try to kill the Buddha. So King Ajatasattu got really wrapped up with bad people. And so he has this background. And of course, later he did convert and things like that. But he's definitely not his father in this regard. So we see here, now at that time, King Ajatasattu of Magadha, son of Princess Videha, wanted to invade the Vajis. He declared, I shall wipe out these Vajis, so mighty and powerful. I shall destroy them and lay ruin and devastation upon them. And then King Ajatasattu addressed Vasakara, the Brahmin minister of Magadha. Please, Brahmin, go to the Buddha and in my name bow with your head to his feet. Ask him if he is healthy and well, nimble and strong, and living comfortably. And then say, Sir, King Ajatasattu of Magadha, son of Princess Videha, wants to invade the Vajis. He says, I shall wipe out these Vajis so mighty and powerful. I shall destroy them and lay ruin and devastation upon them. Remember how well the Buddha answers and tell me. So it's an interesting one, right? He's making a very braggadocious statement. And then he's saying, tell the Buddha this and tell me how he responds. So he says, remember how the Buddha answers and tell it to me, for realized ones say nothing that is not so. Yes, sir, Vasakara replied. He had the finest carriages harnessed, and then he mounted a fine carriage, and, along with other fine carriages, set out from Rajagaha for the Vulture's Peak Mountain. He went by carriage as far as the terrain allowed, and then descended and approached the Buddha on foot, and exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, he sat down to one side and said to the Buddha, Master Gautama, King Ajatasattu of Magadha, son of the Princess of Videha, bows with his head to your feet. He asks if you are healthy and well, and nimble and strong, and living comfortably. Master Gautama, King Ajatasattu, wants to invade the Vajis. He has declared, I shall wipe out these Vajis, so mighty and powerful. I shall destroy them and lay ruin and devastation upon them. Hello, Mary. Welcome in Vidura 1. So now at that time, Venerable Ananda was standing behind the Buddha, fanning him. Then the Buddha said to him, Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis meet frequently and have many meetings? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis meet frequently and have many meetings, they can expect growth, not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis meet in harmony, live in harmony, and carry on their business in harmony? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis meet in harmony, live in harmony, and carry on their business in harmony, they can expect growth and not decline. So do we see a thing going on here? So far, they are doing all good things. Let's see what happens if King Ajatasattu decides to attack. As long as the Vajis, Ananda, have you heard the Vajis don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but proceed having undertaken the ancient Vajjan traditions as they have been decreed? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but proceed having undertaken the ancient Vajjan traditions as they have been decreed, they can expect growth and not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis honor, respect, and esteem and venerate the Vajjan elders and think them worthy of listening to? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis honor, respect, esteem, venerate Vajjan elders and think them worthy of listening to, they can expect growth and not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis don't forcibly abduct women and girls of the clans and make them live with them? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis don't forcibly abduct women or girls of the clans and make them live with them, they can expect growth, not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis honor, respect, and esteem the Vajan shrines, whether inner or outer, not neglecting the proper spirit offerings that were given and made in the past? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajans honor, respect, esteem, and venerate the Vajan shrines, whether inner or outer, not neglecting the proper spirit offerings that were given and made in the past, they can expect growth and not decline. Also, just as an aside, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. If it's a quick question, I can answer it as we're going through. But if it's a longer question, we can wait till the end of the session and we can do a Q&A. A lot of this is going to be fairly straightforward, and I will provide commentary where I think it's probably needed. But if there is a question, please feel free to ask it in the chat. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis organize proper protection, shelter, and security for perfected ones, so that more perfected ones might come to the realm, and those already here may live in comfort? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis organize proper protection, shelter, and security for perfected ones, so that more perfected ones might come to the realm and those already here may live in comfort, they can expect growth, not decline. Then the Buddha said to Vasakara, Brahmin, this one time I was staying near Vesali at the Sarandada woodland shrine. There I taught the Vajis these 7 principles that prevent decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the Vajis, and as long as the Vajis are seen following them, they can expect growth and not decline. This is actually, as somebody who loves history and who studies history deeply, it's quite interesting how on the ball the Buddha is. Like if you study, like for instance, the fall of Rome, right? The fall of Greece, like all these ancient civilizations that lasted even for 1,000 or thousands of years, and you start to see all the various ways that decline. So one of history's if you're a historian and you study history, one of the things you come across is that nobody is conquered from without until they become corrupt from within. And so you see all these lists. All these lists are in inner corruption, not doing the duties of the past, not respecting the elders, not respecting the traditions of the past. All of these things are signs of decline. And so this is a very interesting series that the Buddha gives here. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the Vajis, and as long as the Vajis are seen following them, they can expect growth and not decline. When the Buddha had spoken, Vasakara said to him, Master Gotama, if the Vajis follow even a single one of these principles, they can expect growth, not decline. How much so, all 7? King Ajatasattu cannot defeat the Vajis in war. This is the Brahmin. This is the Brahmin. What you call it? Not ambassador, but the somebody who is a administrator to the king. This is the Brahmin. He's like, oh yeah. I don't know that King Ajatasattu can take over the Vajis. King Ajatasattu cannot defeat the Vajis in war unless by bribery or by sowing dissension. No corruption inside. Well now, Master Gotama, I must go. I have many duties and much to do. Please, Brahmin, go at your convenience. Hello, Kim. Welcome. Then Vasakara, the Brahmin, having approved and agreed with what the Buddha said, got up from his seat and left. Principles that prevent decline amongst mendicants, Buddhist monastics. Soon after he had left, the Buddha said to Ananda, "Go, Ananda, gather all the mendicants staying in the vicinity of Rajagaha together in the assembly hall." "Yes, sir," replied Ananda. He did what the Buddha asked. Then he went back, bowed, stood to one side, and said to him, "Sir, the mendicant Sangha is assembled. Please, sir, go at your convenience." Then the Buddha went to the assembly hall, where he sat on a seat spread out, and addressed the mendicants. "Mendicants, I will teach you these 7 principles that prevent decline. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak." Welcome, Lee. "Yes, sir," they replied. The Buddha said this: "As long as the mendicants meet frequently and have many meetings, they can expect growth and not decline." This is an interesting one because most monastics think, oh, we shouldn't meet much at all. We're supposed to be alone. We're supposed to be hanging out in the woods in solitary. No, this is one of those places, many places in the suttas, where you see that this is actually not the case. The monastics belong to a community. They're part of that community, and that community does need to be able to meet and discuss things, go over things. As long as the mendicants meet in harmony, leave in harmony, and carry on their business in harmony, they can expect growth and not decline. This means that you have to make sure that you do the meetings in a way that not everybody's going to get all disgruntled and annoyed and we're like, oh, we're at another meeting. How many of you in your businesses, your corporations, your organizations, another meeting? Oh. So, as long as mendicants don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but undertake and follow the training rules that they have been decreed, they then can expect growth and not decline, which is another interesting one because later on we see where the Buddha will allow the monks to abolish lesser rules after they go. And this is an interesting balance, right? Sometimes you might need to abolish rules or change things, and sometimes you should probably keep what's already there. So you'll see these things in the suttas. They'll be like, oh wait, how does this contradict with this? And it's usually because it's a different context. So, and both are true. As long as mendicants honor, respect, esteem, venerate the senior mendicants of long standing, long gone forth, fathers and leaders of the Sangha, and think them worth listening to, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as mendicants don't fall under the sway of a risen craving for future lives, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as mendicants take care to live in wilderness lodgings, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as the mendicants individually establish mindfulness, very good, so that the more good-hearted spiritual companions might come, and that those that have already come may live comfortably, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, and as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth and not decline. This is good also for lay people. This is very good people who are in a group, a community, a family. All of these are very good things to follow. I will teach you 7 more principles that prevent decline. As long as mendicants don't relish work, loving it and liking to relish in it, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as they don't relish talk, sleep, company, they don't have corrupt wishes falling under the sway of corrupt wishes. They don't have bad friends, companions, and associates, like Ajatasattu did when choosing Devadatta. They don't stop halfway after achieving some insignificant distinction. They can expect growth and not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, and as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth and not decline. I will teach you 7 more principles that prevent decline. As long as the mendicants are faithful, conscientious, prudent, learned, energetic, mindful, wise, they can expect growth, not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, and as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth, not decline. So if you're like the abbot of a monastery, you're like, ordaining monastics, like you should be looking at this list and be like, okay, let's try to make this list come true in our place. It's wonderful. I will teach you 7 more principles that prevent decline. As long as mendicants develop the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, equanimity. So this is the 7 factors of awakening. They can expect growth, not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, and as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth, not decline. I will teach you 7 more principles that prevent decline. As long as, and notice each one of these 7 sets of principles is becoming more refined, higher mind, higher development. As long as the mendicants develop the perception of impermanence, not self, ugliness, drawbacks, giving up, fading away, cessation, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, and as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth, not decline. I will teach you 6 principles that prevent decline. As long as the mendicants consistently treat the spiritual companions with bodily kindness, verbal kindness, and mental kindness, both in public and in private, they can expect growth, not decline. As long as the mendicants share, without reservation, any material possessions they have gained by legitimate means, even the food placed in the alms bowl, using them in common with their ethical spiritual companions, they can expect growth, not decline. As long as the mendicants live according to the precepts shared with their spiritual companions, both in public and private, such precepts are unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred, liberating, praised by sensible people, not mistaken and leading to immersion. They can expect growth and not decline. As long as the mendicants live according to the view shared with their spiritual companions, both in public and in private, the view that this is noble and emancipating and leads one who practices it to the complete end of suffering, they can expect growth and not decline. As long as these 6 principles that prevent decline last among the mendicants, as long as the mendicants are seen following them, they can expect growth, not decline. And while staying there at the Vulture's Peak, the Buddha often gave this Dhamma talk to mendicants, such as ethics, such as immersion, such as wisdom, sila, samadhi, and panya. These are the threefold division of the Noble Eightfold Path. When immersion is imbued with ethics, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When wisdom is imbued with immersion, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When the mind is imbued with wisdom, it's rightly freed from the defilements, namely the defilements of sensuality, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When the Buddha had stayed at Rajagaha as long as he pleased, he addressed Venerable Ananda. Come, Ananda, let's go to Ambapali. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. Then the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at Ambapali, where he stayed in a royal rest house. And while staying there too, he often gave this Dhamma talk to the mendicants, such as ethics, such as immersion, such as wisdom. When immersion is imbued with ethics, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When wisdom is imbued with immersion, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When the mind is imbued with wisdom, it's rightly freed from the defilements, namely the defilements of sensuality, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When the Buddha had stayed in Ambapali as long as he pleased, he addressed Venerable Ananda. Come, Ananda, let's go to Nalanda. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. There the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at Nalanda, where he stayed at Pavarika's mango grove. Next section, Sariputa's lion's roar. Then Sari-puta went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Sir, I have such confidence in the Buddha that I believe there's no other ascetic or Brahmin, whether past, future, or present, whose direct knowledge is superior to the Buddha when it comes to awakening. And the Buddha says, that's a grand and dramatic statement, Sari-puta. You've roared a definitive categorical lion's roar, saying, I have such confidence in the Buddha that I believe there's no ascetic or Brahmin, whether past, future, or present, whose direct knowledge is superior to the Buddha when it comes to awakening. What about all the perfected ones, the fully awakened Buddhas who lived in the past? Have you comprehended their minds to know that those Buddhas had such ethics of such qualities or such wisdom or such meditation or such freedom? No, sir. And what about all the perfected ones, the fully awakened Buddhas who will live in the future? Have you comprehended their minds to know that those Buddhas will have such ethics, or such qualities, or such wisdom, or such meditation, or such freedom? No, sir. And what about me, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha at present? Have you comprehended my mind to know that I have such ethics, or such teachings, or such wisdom, or such meditation, or such freedom? No, sir. Well then, Sari-puta, given that you don't comprehend the minds of Buddhas past, future, or present, what exactly are you doing, making such a grand and dramatic statement, roaring such a definitive, categorical lion's roar? Sari-puta. And speaking of which, by the way, one of the things we should know about Sari-puta is that he has 0 psychic powers. So he can't read anybody's mind. He can't see devas. He can't hear devas. Sari-puta is the Buddha's foremost disciple on wisdom, but he has no ability to do any of these things. So Sari-puta replies, Sir, though I don't comprehend the mind of Buddha's past, future, or present, still I understand this by inference from the teaching. Suppose there was a king's frontier citadel with fortified embankments, ramparts, and arches, and a single gate. And it was a gatekeeper, and it has a gatekeeper who is astute, competent, and intelligent. He keeps strangers out and lets known people in. As he walks around the patrol path, he doesn't see a hole or a cleft in the wall, not even one big enough for a cat to slip out. He thinks, whatever sizable creatures enter or leave the citadel, all of them do so via this gate. In the same way, I understand this by inference from the teaching. All the perfected ones, the fully awakened Buddhas, whether past, future, or present, give up the 5 hindrances, corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom. Their mind is firmly established in the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. They correctly develop the 7 awakening factors, and they wake up to the supreme perfect awakening. And while staying at Nalanda too, the Buddha often gave the Dhamma talk to the mendicants, such as ethics, such as immersion, such as wisdom. When immersion is imbued with ethics, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When wisdom is imbued with immersion, it's very fruitful and beneficial. When the mind is imbued with wisdom, it's rightly freed and from the defilements, namely the defilements of sensuality, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. The section on the drawbacks of unethical conduct. When the Buddha had stayed in Nalanda as long as he pleased, he addressed Venerable Ananda. Come, Ananda, let's go to Patali village. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. Then the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at Patali village. The lay followers of Patali village heard that he had arrived. So they went to see him, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Sir, please consent to come to our guest house. The Buddha consented with silence. Then, knowing that the Buddha had consented, the lay followers of Patali village got up from their seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha. keeping him on their right. Then they went to the guest house, where they spread carpets all over, prepared seats, set up a water jar, and placed a lamp. Then they went back to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and told him their preparations, saying, "Please, sir, come at your convenience." In the morning, the Buddha robed up, and taking his bowl and robe, went to the guest house together with a sangha of mendicants. Having washed his feet, he entered the guest house and sat against the central column facing east. The sangha of mendicants also washed their feet, entered the guest house, and sat against the west wall facing east, with the Buddha right in front of them. The lay followers of Patali village also washed their feet, entered the guest house, and sat against the east wall facing west, with the Buddha right in front of them. Then the Buddha addressed them. Householders, there are these 5 drawbacks for an unethical person because of their failure in ethics. What 5? Firstly, an unethical person loses substantial wealth on account of negligence. This is the first drawback. Furthermore, an unethical person gets a bad reputation. This is the second. Furthermore, an unethical person enters any kind of assembly timid and embarrassed, whether it's an assembly of aristocrats, Brahmins, householders, or ascetics. This is the third drawback. Furthermore, an unethical person feels lost when they die. This is the fourth drawback. Furthermore, an unethical person, when their body breaks up after death, is reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. This is the fifth drawback. These are the 5 drawbacks of an unethical person because of their failure in ethics. The benefits of ethical conduct. There are these 5 benefits for an ethical person because of their accomplishments in ethics. What 5? An ethical person gains substantial wealth on account of diligence. Furthermore, an ethical person gets a good reputation. Furthermore, an ethical person enters any kind of assembly bold and self-assured, whether it's an assembly of aristocrats, Brahmins, householders, or ascetics. This is the third benefit. Furthermore, an ethical person dies not feeling lost. This is the fourth benefit. Furthermore, when an ethical person's body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a good place, a heavenly realm. This is the fifth benefit. These are the 5 benefits for an ethical person because of their accomplishment in ethics. The Buddha spent much of the night educating, encouraging, firing up, and inspiring the lay followers of Patali village with a Dhamma talk. Then he dismissed them. The night is getting late, householders. Please go at your convenience. Yes, sir, replied the lay followers of Patali village. They got up from their seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on their right before leaving. Soon after they left, the Buddha entered a private cubicle. Building a citadel. Now at that time, the Magadhan minister Sunida and Vasikara were building a citadel at Patali village to keep the Vajis out. So remember, this is Vasikara, who the same from the beginning of the Sutta, who was sent by King Ajatasattu to talk to the Buddha. And now they're shoring up their defenses against the Vajis. At that time, thousands of deities were taking possession of building sites in Patali village. Illustrious rulers or royal ministers inclined to build houses at sites possessed by illustrious deities. Middling rulers or royal ministers inclined to build houses at sites possessed of middling deities. Lesser rulers or royal ministers inclined to build houses at sites possessed of lesser deities. With clairvoyance that is purified and superhuman, the Buddha saw these deities taking possession of building sites in Patali village. The Buddha rose at the crack of dawn and addressed Ananda. Ananda, who is building a citadel in Patali village? Sir, the Magadhan ministers Sunida and Vasikara are building a citadel to keep the Vajis out. It's as if they were building a citadel in consultation with the gods of the 33. So these are the devas. So the Buddha's like, it's as if they're working together to build these dwelling places. With clairvoyance that is purified and superhuman, I saw these deities taking possession of building sites. Illustrious rulers and royal. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I'm probably realizing that I probably should start ellipsing some of the repetitions if we're going to finish it in 2 hours. So I'm actually thinking about possibly going the extra half hour tonight, unless people completely reject it, to finish tomorrow. So again, the illustrious, the middling, and the lesser ministers built sites at the same as the deities, matching the same level. As far as the civilized region extends, as far as the trading zone extends, this will be the chief city, the Pataliputa Trade Center. But Pataliputa will face 3 threats from fire, flood, and dissension. Then the Magadhan ministers, Sunita and Vasikara, approached the Buddha, exchanged greetings with him. When the greetings and polite conversation were over, they stood to one side and said, "Would Master Gautama, together with the mendicant Sangha, please accept today's meal from me?" The Buddha consented in silence. Then, knowing that the Buddha had consented, they went to their own guest house, where they had delicious fresh and cooked foods prepared. Then they had the Buddha informed of the time, saying, "It's time, Master Gautama, the meal is ready." Then the Buddha robed up in the morning, and taking his bowl and robe, went to their guest house together with the mendicant Sangha, where he sat on a seat spread out. Then Sunita and Vasikara served and satisfied the mendicant Sangha, headed by the Buddha, with their own hands, with delicious, fresh, and cooked foods. When the Buddha had eaten and washed his hand and bowl, Sunita and Vasikara took a low seat and sat to one side. The Buddha expressed his appreciation with these verses. "In the place he makes his dwelling, having fed the astute and the virtuous here, the restrained spiritual practitioners, he should dedicate an offering to the deities there. Venerated, they venerate him. Honor, they honor him. After that, they have compassion for him, like a mother for the child at her breast. A man beloved of the deities always sees nice things." When the Buddha had expressed his appreciation to Sunita and Vasikara with these verses, he got up from his seat and left. Sunita and Vasikara followed behind the Buddha, thinking, "The gate through which the ascetic Gautama departs today shall be named the Gautama Gate. The ford at which he crosses the Ganges River shall be called the Gautama Ford." Then the gate through which the Buddha departed was named the Gautama Gate, and the Buddha came to the Ganges River. Now at that time, hello Bhumika, welcome. Now at that time the Ganges was full to the brim, so a crow could drink from it. Waiting to cross from the near to the far shore, some people were seeking a boat, some a dinghy, while some were tying up a raft. But as easily as a strong person would extend or contract their arm, the Buddha, together with the mendicant Sangha, vanished from the near shore and landed on the far shore. He saw all those people wanting to cross over. Knowing the meaning of this, on that occasion the Buddha expressed this heartfelt sentiment. Those who cross the deluge or stream have built a bridge and left the marshes behind, while some people are still tying a raft. Intelligent people have crossed over. I don't know if I like that translation, intelligent, because this is thinking like, oh, I got 10 PhDs and my, such and such is, this is my IQ. That means this is somebody who is wise and who has become awakened. So this is not somebody meeting with PhDs or whatever intelligence as we think it is. So we should understand that. Talk on the noble truths. Then the Buddha said to Venerable Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let's go to the village of Koti." "Yes, sir," Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at the village of Koti and stayed there. Then he addressed the mendicants. "Mendicants, due to not understanding and not penetrating the Four Noble Truths, both you and I have wandered and transmigrated for such a very long time. What for? The noble truths of suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. These noble truths have been cut off. The conduit to rebirth is ended, and now there are no more future lives." This is what the Buddha said. Then the Holy One, the teacher, went on to say, "Because of not truly seeing the Four Noble Truths, we have transmigrated for such a long time, from one rebirth to the next. But now these truths have been seen. The conduit to rebirth is eradicated. The root of suffering is cut off. Now there is no more future lives." And while staying at the village of Koti, too, the Buddha often gave this Dhamma talk to the mendicants. We know this Dhamma talk already, such as ethics, such as immersion, such as wisdom. The death of Nattica. Oh, the deaths in Nattica, sorry. When the Buddha had stayed in the village of Koti as long as he pleased, he said to Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let's go to the land of the Natticas." "Yes, sir," Ananda replied. Then the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at the land of the Natticas, where he stayed in the brick house at Nattica. Then Venerable Ananda went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat to one side, and said to him, "Sir, the monk named Salha has passed away at Nattica. Where has he been reborn in his next life? The nun named Nanda, the layman named Sudatta." Sudatta is also, I believe, the name of Anathapindika, but this is not the same. And the laywoman named Sujata has passed away in Nattica. Where have they been reborn in the next life? The layman named Kakata, Kaliba, Nikata, Katissa, Tutta, Santutta, Baddha, and Subadda have passed away in Nattica. Where have they been reborn in the next life? Ananda, the monk Sala, has realized the undefiled freedom of the heart and freedom by wisdom in this very life, having realized it with his own insight. The nun Nanda has entered the 5 lower fetters, so she's become a non-returner. The layman Siddhartha has ended the 3 fetters and weakened greed and hatred, so layman Siddhartha has become a once returner. And the laywoman Sujata has ended the 3 fetters. She's a stream enterer. The layman Kakata, Kaliba, Nikata, Katissa, Tutta, Santutta, Baddha, and Subadda have ended the 5 lower fetters. They've been reborn spontaneously. So again, non-returner. Over 50 laymen in Nattica have passed away, having ended the 5 lower fetters. They've been reborn spontaneously and will be extinguished here, not liable to be reborn from that world. More than 90 laymen in Nattica have passed away, having ended the 3 fetters and weakened greed, hate, and delusion. They're once returners. In excess of 500 laymen in Nattica have passed away, having ended 3 fetters. They're stream enters, not liable to be reborn in the underworld, bound for awakening. There's a wonderful sutta where the Buddha, Ananda, comes to the Buddha asking the same kind of thing. And Ananda is like, and the Buddha's like, Ananda, if you were to ask where everybody has gone, this would be very wearying to the Buddha. So you see, this was a very common thing, right? How many times a day, wherever the Buddha was, people were like, oh, this person, where did they go? Where did they go? The mirror of the teaching. Oh, actually, wow. Okay, never mind. It's literally the next one. So here it goes. It's hardly surprising that a human being should pass away. But if you should come and ask me about it each and every time someone passes away, that would be a bother for me. All right, so I was wondering, is it in this one? And I didn't think it was, but there it is. All right. So Ananda, I will teach you the explanation of the Dhamma called the mirror of the teaching. A noble disciple who has this may declare of themselves, I finished with rebirth in hell, the animal realm, the ghost realm. So this is somebody who's declaring for themselves that they are a stream enter. I am a stream enter. I'm not liable to be reborn in the underworld, and am bound for awakening. And what is the mirror of the teaching? It's when a noble disciple has experiential confidence in the Buddha, that blessed one is perfected, a fully awakened Buddha, accomplished in knowledge and conduct, holy, knower of the world, supreme trainer of God, supreme guide for those who wish to train, teacher of gods and humans, awakened and blessed. They have experiential confidence in the teaching. The teaching is well explained by the Buddha, apparent in the present life, immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant, so that sensible people can know it for themselves. They have experiential knowledge in the Sangha, or confidence in the Sangha. The Sangha of the Buddha's disciples is practicing the way that's good, direct, systematic, and proper. It consists of the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 kinds of individuals. This is the Sangha of Buddha's disciples that is worthy of offerings, etc. And a noble disciple's ethical conduct is loved by the noble ones, unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred, liberating, praised by sensible people, and not mistaken, and leading to immersion. That is the mirror of the teaching. So this is where the Buddha is basically giving you the guidelines. If all these match up, you're probably a stream enter. And as my preceptor Bhante Ji would say, if you have to ask me if you're a stream enter, you're not. Which is funny because there are some, even in Theravada, there are some traditions and some people who like, the teacher will say, I'm a stream enter, and the people go around and say, oh, I'm a stream enter. The teacher says so. I don't know. And while staying there at Nattica, the Buddha often gave the Dhamma talk to the mendicants. We know this Dhamma talk, such as ethics, immersion, and wisdom. When the Buddha had stayed in Nattica as long as he pleased, he addressed Venerable Ananda. Come, Ananda, let's go to Vesali. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. Then the Buddha, together with a large sangha of mendicants, arrived at Vesali, where he stayed at Ambapali's mango grove. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, a mendicant should live mindful and aware. This is my instruction to you. And how is a mendicant mindful? It's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of body, so Satipatthana, foundations of mindfulness here, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feelings, mind, principles, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. That's how a mendicant is mindful. And how is a mendicant aware? So this is sampajanya. It's when a mendicant acts with situational awareness when going out and coming back, when looking ahead and aside, when bending and extending the limbs, when bearing the outer robe, bowl, and robes, when eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, when urinating and defecating, when walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking, speaking, and keeping silent. That is how a mendicant is aware. A mendicant should live mindful and aware. This is my instruction to you. Ambapali the courtesan. Ambapali the courtesan heard that the Buddha had arrived and was staying in her mango grove. She had the finest carriages harnessed. Then she mounted a fine carriage and along with other fine carriages set out from Vaisali for her own park. She went by carriage as far as the terrain allowed, then descended and approached the Buddha on foot. She bowed and sat down to one side. Buddha educated, encouraged, fired up, and inspired her with a Dhamma talk. Then she said to the Buddha, "Sir, may the Buddha, together with the mendicant Sangha, please accept tomorrow's meal from me." The Buddha consented in silence. Then, knowing that the Buddha had consented, Ambapali got up from her seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on her right before leaving. The Lichavis of Vaisali also heard that the Buddha had arrived and was staying in Ambapali's mango grove. They had the finest carriages harnessed. They mounted these fine carriages and along with other fine carriages set out for Vaisali. Some of the Lichavis were in blue, of blue color, clad in blue and adorned with blue. So we've come to 8:30. I'm giving people an out if they want to go to bed. You're welcome to go. If you need to head out if you're on the stream, this is going to be recorded so you can hear it, another time if you wish. So again, we'll continue it also tomorrow morning at 8. So, but I do feel, in the interest of finishing this sutta tomorrow, I do feel that we should go the extra half hour. So I'm going to be going the extra half hour. You all don't have to go with me, but continuing on. So the Lichavis have also gotten the carts. And then Ambapali the courtesan collided with those Lichavi youths, axle to axle, wheel to wheel, yoke to yoke. The Lichavis said to her, "What? You wench Ambapali? Are you what you wench Ambapali? Are you doing colliding with us, axle to axle, wheel to wheel, yoke to yoke? When masters, it's because I've invited the Buddha for tomorrow's meal together with the mendicant Sangha. Wench, give us that meal for 100,000. Masters, even if you were to give me Vaisali with her provinces, I still would not give that meal to you." Then the Lichavis snapped their fingers, saying, "We've been beaten by the ante. We've been beaten by the ante." Then they continued to Ambapali's mango grove. So for those of you who don't know, Ambapali, the courtesan, so a courtesan is essentially kind of like a rich, like a prostitute or a woman who is, a prostitute for rich people. This is a courtesan. This is not, so this is why they're kind of treating her. And even though she does, in terms of in the Buddhist circle, she's very well respected. She's a good practitioner. But these Lichavis, this is why they're calling her a wench and saying, "Oh, give it to us. Let us have it. You don't deserve it," kind of a thing. So that's why they're doing this. They continued on to Ambapali's mango grove. The Buddha saw them coming off in the distance and addressed the mendicants. Any of the mendicants who've never seen the gods of the 33 just have to look at the assembly of Lichavis. See the assembly of Lichavis. Check them out. They're just like the gods of the 33. The Lichavis went by carriage as far as the terrain allowed, then descended and approached the Buddha on foot. They bowed to the Buddha, sat down to one side. And the Buddha educated, encouraged, fired up, and inspired them with a Dhamma talk. Then they said to the Buddha, "Sir, may the Buddha together with the mendicant Sangha please accept tomorrow's meal from us." Then the Buddha said to the Lichavis, "I have already accepted tomorrow's meal from Ambapali the courtesan." This is actually one of the rules for monastics. You can't do 2 exceptions in one day. You can't go to somebody's house and then go to another person's house after that. This is not seen as appropriate. So I've already accepted tomorrow's meal from Ambapali, the courtesan. Then the Litchavis snapped their fingers, saying, "We've been beaten by the ante. We've been beaten by the ante." And then those Litchavis approved and agreed with what the Buddha said. They got up from their seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on their right before leaving. And when the night had passed, Ambapali had delicious, fresh, and cooked foods prepared in her own park. Then she had the Buddha informed of the time, saying, "Sir, it's time. The meal is ready." Then the Buddha robed up in the morning, and taking his bowl and robe, went to the home of Ambapali together with the mendicant Sangha, where he sat on the seat spread out. Then Ambapali served and satisfied the mendicant Sangha, headed by the Buddha with her own hands, with delicious fresh and cooked meals. When the Buddha had eaten and washed his hands and bowl, Ambapali took a low seat, sat to one side, and said to the Buddha, "Sir, I present this park to the mendicant Sangha, headed by the Buddha." The Buddha accepted the park. Then the Buddha educated, encouraged, fired up, and inspired her with a Dhamma talk, after which he got up from the seat and left. And while staying at Vesali too, the Buddha often gave this Dhamma talk to the mendicants, such as ethics, such as immersion, such as wisdom. Commencing the rains at Beluva. When the Buddha had stayed in Ambapali's mango grove as long as he pleased, he addressed Venerable Ananda. "Come, Ananda, let's go to the little village of Beluva." "Yes, sir," Ananda replied. So this is also in the sutta. We get a sense of how the Buddha was traveling, right? Except for the Vasa, except for the rains, he was doing this. He was for 40 years. He was just going from place to place to place, and so were most of the monastics until at least later in his teachings, when people started becoming more like village monks and study monks and things like that. But you're getting a glimpse of the Buddha's life here. Then the Buddha, together with a large Sangha of mendicants, arrived in the little village of Beluva and stayed there. Then the Buddha addressed the mendicants. "Mendicants, please enter the rainy season residence with whatever friends or acquaintances you have around Vesali. I'll commence the rainy season residence right here in the little village of Beluva." "Yes, sir," the mendicants replied. Well, the Buddha commenced the rainy season right there. Okay. After the Buddha had commenced the rainy season, he fell severely ill, struck by dreadful pains, close to death. But he endured, unbothered, with mindfulness, situational awareness, sati sampajanya, which he just encouraged us to practice just before. Then it occurred to the Buddha, "It would not be appropriate for me to become fully extinguished before informing my supporters and taking leave of the mendicant Sangha. Why don't I forcefully suppress this illness, stabilize the life force, and live on?" So that's what he did. Then the Buddha's illness died down. Soon after the Buddha had recovered from that sickness, he came out from his dwelling and sat in the shade of the porch on the seat spread out. Then Venerable Ananda went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, it's fantastic that the Buddha is comfortable and well. Because when the Buddha was sick, my body felt like it had been drugged. I was disoriented, and the teachings weren't clear to me." So Ananda was quite distraught when the Buddha was not feeling well and close to death. "Still, at least I was consoled by the thought that the Buddha won't become fully extinguished without bringing something up regarding the Sangha of mendicants. But what could the mendicant Sangha expect from me, Ananda?" This is so wise. Well, what can they expect from me? I've taught the Dhamma without making any distinction between secret and public teachings. So this is the realized one doesn't have the closed fist of a teacher when it comes to the teachings. So the Buddha says he teaches with an open palm, not a closed fist. There's no secret teachings. There's no esoteric teachings. There's no you reach a certain level and then you learn the real truth, right? There's no you become a monastic and you learn the secret teachings. There's none of that. The Buddha teaches straight, right? So he's like, well, I've taught everybody everything. What can I What else can they know? What do they need? If there's anyone who thinks I shall lead the mendicant. Oh, okay. So the realized one says, I don't have the closed fists of a teacher. If there's anyone who thinks I shall lead the mendicant sangha, or the sangha of mendicants is meant for me, let them bring up something regarding the sangha. But the realized one doesn't even think like this. So why should he bring up something regarding the sangha? I'm old, elderly, and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. I'm currently 80 years old. Just as a decrepit old cart keeps going by relying on straps, in the same way, the realized one's body keeps going as if it were relying on straps. Sometimes the realized one, not focusing on any signs and with the cessation of certain feelings, enters and remains in the signless immersion of the heart. Only then does the realized one's body become more comfortable. So, Ananda, live as your own island. Be an island unto yourself. This is one of those things, as somebody who is getting into Buddhism and, just reading the suttas and like, be your own island. Live as your own island, your own refuge with no other refuge. That is so profound. Let the teaching be your island, your refuge, with no other refuge. The Dhamma. Let the Dhamma be your refuge. And how does a mendicant do this? It's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, foundations of mindfulness. Keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feelings, mind, principles. This is how a mendicant is their own island, their own refuge with no other refuge. That's how the teaching is their island, their refuge with no other refuge. Whether now or after I have passed, any who shall live as their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge, with the teaching as their island, as their refuge, with no other refuge, those mendicants of mine who want to train shall be among the best of the best. This is your ideal. If you are a Buddhist practitioner, this is how you train. Just like this. And in another place, the Buddha says, those who pay respects to me the most are those who practice Dhamma in line with the Dhamma. Just like this. An obvious hint. Then the Buddha robed up in the morning and taking his bowl and robe, entered Vesali for alms. Then after the meal on his return from alms round, he addressed the Venerable Ananda. Ananda, get your sitting cloth. Let's go to Chapala's shrine for the day's meditation. Yes, sir, replied Ananda, taking his sitting cloth. He followed behind the Buddha. Then the Buddha went up to Chapala shrine, where he sat on the seat spread out. Ananda bowed to the Buddha and sat down to one side. The Buddha said to him, Ananda, Vesali is lovely, and the Udena, Gotamaka, 7 maidens, many sons, Sarananda, and Chapala tree shrines are all lovely. Whoever has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic powers, made them a vehicle and a basis, kept them up, consolidated them, and properly implemented them, may, if they wish, live for the proper lifespan or what's left of it. The realized one has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic powers, made them a vehicle and a basis, kept them up, consolidated them, and properly implemented them. If he wished, the realized one could live for the proper lifespan or what's left of it. So this is an important aspect here. This is a very debated aspect. The Pali word here, kalpa. So some people take this to mean that the Buddha could force himself to live for thousands of more years. And some people take it to mean that he could live for the full length of the normal lifespan, which is about 100 years. So this is Bhante Sujato and Bhikkhu Bodhi take the 100-year. And I think that's probably the accurate, because in my opinion, it makes no sense. And I don't see any other way where the Buddha could keep a body basically going against impermanence for thousands of years. I just don't see it that way. It doesn't make sense in terms of all the other teachings. If you get into the Buddha being a bit more omnipotent or omniscient and more godlike, later on, maybe he can do something like that. But the Buddha of the suttas, of the early texts, he already was talking about how his body is like holding together a card. So I also agree with Bhikkhu Bodhi and Bhante Sujato that he's talking about he could live on for probably another 20 years if he wanted to. The realized one has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic powers. He could live on for a proper lifespan. But Ananda didn't get it. Even though Buddha dropped such an obvious hint, such a clear sign, he didn't beg the Buddha. Sir, may the Blessed One please remain for the eon. May the Holy One please remain for the eon. That would be for the welfare and happiness of the people, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans. For his mind was as if possessed by Mara. For a second time, for the third time, the Buddha said to Ananda. So repeating the same thing, basically giving 3 hints, saying, whoever develops this could stay for, the rest of the lifespan. But Ananda didn't get it. Even though the Buddha dropped such an obvious hint, such a clear sign, he didn't beg the Buddha. Sir, may the Blessed One please remain for the eon. Then Buddha got up and said to Venerable Ananda, Go, Ananda, at your convenience. Yes, sir, replied Ananda. So the next section, the appeal of Mara. And then not long after Ananda had left, Mara the wicked went up to the Buddha, stood to one side and said to him, Sir, may the Blessed One now become fully extinguished. Get the heck out of here, Buddha. Just like Mara did when the Buddha first became awakened, and Mara's like, get out of here. You don't need to stick around. Just go. May the Blessed One now become fully extinguished. May the Holy One now become fully extinguished. Now is the time for Buddha to get out, to become fully extinguished. So he continues on. Buddha, you once said, wicked one, I shall not become fully extinguished until I have what? The fourfold assembly. Monk disciples, bhikkhu disciples, bhikkhuni disciples, laymen and laywomen disciples, who practice properly, living in line with the teaching, not until they've learned the tradition and explain, teach, and assert, establish, disclose, analyze, and make it clear, not until they have legitimately and completely refuted the doctrines of others. Today you have such disciples. So, you have the disciples. They're all here. Just go away. Come on, go. Become fully extinguished. All right. And so Mara continues, today your spiritual path is successful and prosperous, extensive, popular, widespread, and well proclaimed wherever there are gods and humans. May you go away. May the Blessed One now become fully extinguished. When this was said, the Buddha said to Mara, relax, wicked one. The final extinguisher of the realized one will be soon. 3 months from now, the realized one will finally be extinguished. And Mara did a little dance. Surrendering the life force. So at the Chapala tree shrine, the Buddha, mindfully and aware, surrendered the life force. When he did so, there was a great earthquake, awe-inspiring, hair-raising, thunder cracked the sky. Then, understanding this matter, on that occasion, the Buddha expressed the heartfelt sentiment. Comparing the incomparable with the creation of prolonged life, the sage surrendered to life force. Happy inside and serene, he shadowed self-creation like a suit of armor. And Philip makes a comment here. Ananda was attacked after the Buddha's Parinibbana by those that had resentment against him. People Poor Ananda, who in my community, where we've been reading the suttas for 7 years, we've gone through so many situations where Ananda just is we call Ananda the Buddhist every person. he's the one who's screwing up, while surrounded by all these like amazing, arahants, and Ananda is like, I think this, and the Buddha's like, don't think so, Ananda. So yeah, Ananda is kind of the punching bag in a way, in many of the suttas in that way. So the cause of earthquakes. Then Venerable Ananda thought, how incredible and amazing. That was a really big earthquake. That was a really big earthquake, awe-inspiring, hair-raising, thunder cracked the sky. What's the cause? Then Venerable Ananda went to the Buddha. What's the cause of the reason for this great earthquake? Ananda, there are 8 causes and reasons for great earthquakes. What 8? The great earth is grounded on water. The water is grounded on the air, and the air stands in space. At a time when a great wind blows, it stirs the water, and the water stirs the earth. This is the first cause for a great earthquake. Furthermore, there is an ascetic or Brahmin with psychic power who has achieved mastery of the mind, or a god who is mighty and powerful. They've developed limited perception of earth and limitless perception of water. They make the earth shake. Furthermore, when the being intent on awakening, so this is Bodhisattva, this is the Buddha, who is taking his final birth. The being intent on awakening passes away from the host of joyful gods. He's conceived in his mother's belly, mindful and aware. Then the earth shakes. This is the third cause. Furthermore, when the being intent on awakening comes out of his mother's belly, mindful and aware, the earth shakes. Furthermore, when the realized one realizes the supreme perfect awakening, the earth shakes. Furthermore, when a realized one rolls forth the supreme wheel of Dhamma, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the earth shakes. Furthermore, when the realized one, mindful and aware, surrenders the life force, the earth shakes. Ding, 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 ding. Now Ananda. This is the 7th cause. Furthermore, when the realized one becomes fully extinguished, the earth shakes. These are the 8 reasons. 8 assemblies. There are, Ananda, 8 assemblies. What 8? The assemblies of aristocrats, Brahmins, householders, and ascetics. The assemblies of the gods of the 4 great kings, the gods of the 33, the Maras, and the Brahmas. I recall having approached an assembly of hundreds of aristocrats. There I used to sit with them, converse, and engage in discussion. My appearance and voice became just like theirs. I educated, encouraged, fired, and inspired them with a Dhamma talk, but when I spoke, they didn't know. Who is this that speaks? Is it God or human? And when my Dhamma talk was finished, I vanished. But when I vanished, they didn't know. I recall having approached assembly of Brahmins, householders, ascetics, gods of the 4 great kings, the 33, Maras, Brahmas. There too, I used to sit with them, converse, and engage in discussion. My appearance and voice became like theirs. I gave them a Dhamma talk, but they said, who is this that speaks? Who is it that vanished? They didn't know. 8 dimensions of mastery. Ananda, there are these 8 dimensions of mastery. What 8? Perceiving form internally. Someone sees visions externally, limited, both pretty and ugly. Mastering them, they perceive, I know, and see. This is the first. Perceiving form internally, they see visions externally, limitless, both pretty and ugly. Not perceiving form. I'm skipping through a lot of these sections here because a lot of the really best stuff is still yet to come. And I'm really trying, I'm almost about halfway. So we're getting, this extra half hour has been very helpful. So we should be able to finish tomorrow, as long as I do some, ellipsing of parts that are not that important and focusing more on parts that are important, or more important, I should say. 。  . 。  . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . Not perceiving form internally, someone sees visions internally, limitless, both pretty and ugly. Not perceiving form internally, someone sees visions externally, they are blue with blue color. Not perceiving form internally, someone sees visions externally, they are yellow with yellow color. This is getting into kasina signs, the colors. Not perceiving form internally, they see visions externally that are red with red color. They see visions that are white with white color. The 8 liberations. Ananda, there are these 8 liberations. What 8? Having physical form, they see visions. This is the first. Not perceiving form internally, they see visions externally. This is the second. They're focused only on beauty. That's the third. Going totally beyond the perception of form with the ending of perception of impingement. Not focusing on perception of diversity, aware that space is infinite. So now we're getting into the arupa attainments. They enter and remain in dimension of infinite space. They enter and remain in dimension of infinite consciousness. They enter and remain in the dimension of nothingness, in the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, the cessation of perception and feelings. These are the 8 liberations. Ananda, this one time when I was first awakened, I was staying near Uruvela at the goat herd's banyan tree on the bank of the Naranjara River. Then Mara the wicked approached me, stood to one side and said, "Sir, may the Blessed One now be fully extinguished. May the Holy One get out of here." When he had spoken, I said to Mara, "I shall not become extinguished until," so it's repeating what we just went through, the fourfold assembly. And now he says to Ananda, "Today, Mara came to me and said with the same request, reminding me of my former statement. When he spoke this, I said to Mara, 'Relax, wicked one. The final extinguishment of the realized one will be soon. 3 months from now, the realized one will be finally extinguished. So today, just at the Kapala tree shrine, mindful and aware, I surrender to life force.'" When he said this, Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "Sir, may the Blessed One please remain for the eon. May the Holy One please remain for the eon. That would be for the welfare and happiness of the people, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans." Too late, Ananda. Enough now, Ananda. Do not beg the realized one. Now is not the time to beg the realized one. For a second time, for a third time. Ananda, do you have faith in the realized one's awakening? Yes, sir. Then why do you keep pressing me up to a third time? Sir, I have heard and learned this in the presence of the Buddha. Whoever has developed and cultivated the 4 bases of psychic powers can extend their lifespan. And so then he asked Ananda again, "Do you have faith, Ananda?" Therefore, Ananda, the misdeed is yours alone. The mistake is yours alone. For even though the realized one dropped such an obvious hint, such a clear sign, you didn't beg me to remain for the eon or what's left of it. If you had begged me, I would have refused twice, but consented the third time. Therefore, Ananda, the misdeed is yours alone. The mistake is yours alone. Ananda, I was staying near Rajagaha, Vulture's Peak Mountain. There I said to you, Ananda, Rajagaha is lovely. So is the Vulture's Peak. Okay, so this is, again, he's repeating. Ananda, I went through this. I told you this, but you didn't get it. Even though I dropped such an obvious hint, such a clear sign, you didn't beg me to remain. If you had begged me, I would have refused twice. And now he's going through, actually, Now the Buddha's telling him, I told you this also at all of these other places. You heard me say these things, but you didn't get it. Okay, going through at Gautamaka Shrine, Seven Maiden Shrine. This is ellipsed by Bhante Sujato. I'm not skipping over actual texts here. So even this section, the translator has ellipsed. So therefore, Ananda, the misdeed is yours, the mistake is yours alone. And now this is did I not prepare for this when I explained? So did I not kind of prepare you all when I explained? We must be parted and separated from all those we hold dear. Those of you who know the 5 subjects of contemplation, you know that's number 4. So the Buddha's like, didn't I teach you this? Right? How could it possibly be that which is born, created, conditioned, and liable to wear out should not wear out? The realized one has discarded, eliminated, released, given up, relinquished, and surrendered the life force. He has definitively stated the final extinguishment will be soon. It's not possible for the realized one, for the sake of life, to take back the life force once it has been given up like that. Come on, Nanda, let's go to the great wood, the hall with the peaked roof. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. So the Buddha went with Ananda to the hall with the peaked roof and said to him, Go, Ananda, gather all the mendicants staying in the vicinity of Vesali together in the assembly hall. Yes, sir, replied Ananda. He did what the Buddha asked, went to him, bowed, stood to one side, and said to him, Sir, the mendicant Sangha has assembled. Please, sir, go at your own convenience. Then the Buddha went to the assembly hall, where he sat on the seat spread out and addressed the mendicants. I think we're going to end here. This is a good place to stop. It's also close to 9 o'clock. I've kept those of you who stayed up, I've kept you up. So if you would like to, you can come back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., and we'll finish it out. Or you can see it at another time recorded. But we are just about halfway through, so that worked out quite well. All right. Okay, friends. See you tomorrow or another time. Sukhi Hotu. Practice well and be well. Have a good night.